good.
Right, we are live on. Good evening, councillors and deputy clerk. Just to remind you, we are live on YouTube, and please be aware that we don't want no outbursts like we've all seen recently, and the protocols that we've agreed in policy and subsequently to full council, they remain in place. So that said, we'll go to item 2, apologies for absence. Well, I've got one from the mayor who's apologised, and Councillor Linda Johnson is substituting for him. And also, I believe Councillor Boynton, he's working, and he to put his normal apologies in, please.
Yes, Mr.
He may try and attend, but obviously he's working late. No more apologies? No. So then on to item 3, declarations. 3A, to record declarations of interest by any member of the council in respect of the agenda items listed below. Yeah, I've got you in. Members declaring interest should identify the agenda item and type of interest being declared. Ian.
It's a non-prejudicial interest, but the Evans Halshaw application is directly opposite as well, you know, Peter.
Oh yeah.
Directly opposite my house. So I have we've decided it's non-prejudicial, my interest.
Right. And Linda, have you recorded that, Matt? Yeah. Linda?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to declare an interest in as much as I'm an East Riding councillor on St Mary's ward, and I'm also a member of the working group for the Hansa League. Thank you.
Any more declarations?
Yeah.
Councillor Owsley?
I'm also a working member of the Hansel League, non-prejudicial interest, and I'd consider myself free to speak on that one. And Holly Lodge, I'm an old friend of the owner of Holly Lodge and declare a non-prejudicial interest in that case.
Okie dokie. Councillor Willis, unmute.
I'm on the Hanseatic League Working Party as well.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Right.
So
right.
I don't see that as any problem.
No. Okay. Okay, can you all mute yourselves then? Thank you. And 3B, to note dispensations given to any member of the council in respect of the agenda items listed below. And 4, to approve and sign the minutes of the Planning and Property Services Committee held on the 26th of January. You've got them attached. Yeah. Ian's moving them. I'll second them. Agreed? Yeah. Okay, right, thank you. Item 5, delegated responses. The responses are laid out before you. There's only 2 which Matt and myself have dealt with. The old all Vicar Lane and Bar House 67 North Bar within. And you can see on the delegated responses what we've put. Are you in agreement with that? Yeah. So planning and environment applications. What I would like to do here is to bring item 3, East Riding Leisure Flemingate Beverley to the top, and then after we've got that one out the way, continue. we do have a member of the public who's kindly waiting in the waiting room. Matt's given her plenty of cups of tea and coffee. So if we could, her name is Abby Carver. So if we could have Abby Carver join us. And then over to you, Matt. Good evening, Abby.
Hello.
Oh, hello. Just for the deputy clerk to say a few words whilst we are dealing with all the planning applications tonight, and then it'll be over to you, Abby, once we've got Matt out of the way.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Recently, myself and the chair both at different points attended some planning training with Earnlicker. There are some changes on the horizon, and also looking at ongoing planning matters. One of the big things that I was reminded of, that this is just to remind councillors, is that whilst planning can be a very emotional issue because it directly affects people's lives, councillors have to look at the facts on both sides of any arguments and look at the comments made by officers, look at the comments made by residents, and look at the facts for themselves. And so whilst councillors are individuals as well, who will naturally have emotions about matters, please try as much as possible to look at all the facts and consider all the facts as a whole before making any proposed comments. And just to explain to Abby, I'm sure she's already aware, I've explained in the email that the town council isn't a final decision-making body. The East Riding of Yorkshire Council can or choose not to take into consideration comments made by councillors. But we do, every planning application we get, we do make a comment, even if it's just to have no objection, but just so you're assured that this council will make its comments depending on what councillors decide. On the agenda, you'll notice that the suggested comments that I've submitted, these can be completely out of, not on this application, with it being so big, but those comments aren't in stone. They're just suggestions that councillors can decide to alter or accept. So my role is simply to record the matters, and I will now hand over to you, Abby, if you want to speak to the committee about this application.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I believe I'm speaking on behalf of a number of residents. I think some of them have written individual letters to yourself as well. I think an awful lot of residents don't actually know that this application is taking place again either. I bumped into one neighbour in the street today who definitely wasn't aware of it. Obviously this time we can't go and door knock and drop any leaflets round to assist anybody that doesn't have access to the internet due to the COVID restrictions. So we think that that is definitely putting us on the back foot in relation to advising everybody in the local area. However, the people that I have spoken to electronically, I haven't spoken to anybody that is actually content that this fresh application is acceptable. We think that despite the changes or the slight alterations we believe they've made, the impacts on the residents still remain the same as they were when the application was rejected. We think that the location that's been chosen, it's not appropriate. I would like to say that the effects on visual disturbance, noise and air pollution will still remain. If I can just go from my notes as well here, sorry. Ultimately, what we're saying is a power plant within such a close location to residential areas that emits pollution and sound just isn't acceptable. We would expect to see it more on an industrial estate, and we think that the council should use their resources to try and find an alternative location rather than submitting this application again. I know initially, before the first application, they considered Lord Roberts Road and what was my second location? Sorry, let me just find out where I've put this. There was definitely Lord Roberts Road, and I think it was Graben Lane. But the council actually dismissed these two locations because they decided that they were too close to residents. I believe that some of the residents in Minster Avenue are actually closer to this proposed location than the residents would have been at the other two locations. One comment I will make about the initial application is they suggested houses on Minster Avenue were of no front garden. I don't know if we're trying to say that there are cheap housing so it doesn't matter, or what conclusion you would like to draw from the statement they are houses of no front garden. But I don't really think it's an appropriate comment or consideration to make when we're talking about disturbing people with pollution and noise. It shouldn't matter what type of house you live in as to whether or not you're subjected to these matters. It seems that the council, after the being declined, have just decided to carry on with this application through hell and high water. I can see they've moved the building back 2 metres. I don't think that that will make any difference to the residents whatsoever. They've reduced the flue that emits the pollution. I know CHP is a cleaner energy, but it's not one without pollution. By reducing the flue, I'm now concerned that the pollution to the residents will increase. As if it wouldn't, I don't know why they would have done a flue at the height that they originally planned. So now to reduce it, I think that we're reducing the visual appearance, but we're potentially increasing the pollution to the individuals. I noticed that they've moved some of the parts to the changing room roof, and they're saying that this will basically stop the noise. I don't think this is accurate, and I do need to try and get in contact with the author of the sound report. When I asked at the pre-consultation meeting about it, I was told that the individual wasn't an expert that was hosting the meeting, so I couldn't really go into much detail about it. But my understanding of the way decibels works is if you have a TV on in the background and a mobile telephone constantly rings, it wouldn't necessarily increase your decibels in that room. But if you couldn't turn that mobile phone off and it's still constantly ringing, you can definitely hear it. So what I think is going to happen is that there will be a constant noise 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from this power plant. And I just don't think it's acceptable within 30 metres to some people's houses. Any more issues? I don't think we can comment on the sewer network issues that were originally raised at the last application. Can I just, sorry, quickly double check that I think we've got everything covered from myself and from the number of residents that I've spoken to. I think they said they were going to plant some trees, but they are removing a very mature oak tree. They said on the initial application that that was damaged or could potentially have been damaged, but it's still standing now. So it obviously wasn't that dangerous that we needed to remove it instantly. But under this new application, they did agree on the pre-consultation that that oak tree definitely will be getting removed in order for them to be able to fit that power plant in there. The original application had an awful lot of inaccurate statements. A couple of those, they said that it was the rail track was tree lined, wouldn't be seen by residents. There's a couple of very small trees that are regularly trimmed because they can't be too large because they're actually on rail track land. At the time, a number of residents wrote to the council to ask them to respond under certain points. They didn't bother to respond. And I know on this occasion, a number of residents have again raised questions and they haven't been responded to either. So I think we're in exactly the same position now as we were before. I know that the council were told at the last application that they didn't just need to be whiter than white, they needed to be seen to be whiter than white. I don't think this is the case. We've asked for information about the amount of public monies that have already been spent on the previous application, and how much public money is going to be spent on this next application. But that information hasn't been forthcoming either. I think that covers the majority of the residents that I've spoken to's current concerns around the issue. It still remains a power plant. The houses still remain in the same location. Just because we try and make it look a little bit pretty, or reduce the flue but still pump the pollution across for our children to breathe in, doesn't change. It's still a power plant, and I think it should be in on an industrial park, not in a residential area.
Thank you very much, Abby, for that presentation and your concerns. It was well presented, I must say, but we cannot, in our whatever we say, we cannot ask or request the East Riding to put it on an industrial estate. In the ideal world, you're probably right. It should be on an industrial estate, but we are where we are with it, and we've got this planning application before us. And as Matt said to you earlier at the top of the meeting, that the East Riding can either the officers can listen to what we have to say, but once it gets before members of the East Riding Planning Committee, they are the decision makers.
Yeah.
And whether they choose to read what we've said, or they've made their minds up already, who knows? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at the information under the refusal, and it was under paragraph 180 of the National Planning Policy, which requires the development to have regard to achieving a high standard of amenity for existing properties and ensure that any new development is appropriate for its location, taking into the account the likely effects of noise and light pollution. I still don't think that it passes. The noise is still going to be there. And like I say, I will attempt to get further clarification from the author of that report, who is an expert. But I think the effects on the residents are still going to be exactly the same. People are saying it's not just going to affect their physical health, it's going to affect their mental health as well.
Can I just ask you a question, Abby? You say you're speaking up on behalf of the residents, and the planning part.
Sorry, only those that I've been able to contact via email.
Yeah. But the East Riding Planning Portal doesn't have an objection from residents.
I wasn't aware until a couple of days ago that it was even on the portal yet. The original, are you talking about the original application or the new?
No, this application.
Nobody knew it was on there. The signs on the lamppost have only gone up today.
I'm looking at Matt. Matt, would that be right?
I can't speak on behalf of the East Riding regarding when they put the notices up, but regarding the actual planning portal, we get notifications when a planning application comes in. The agenda was circulated last Thursday, and at that point there were no comments on the website. I think when I looked yesterday, there were no comments on the website either. We're in a privileged position in that I get an email telling me when any application is put on the planning portal, whereas members of the public won't be in that position. That's why we have prior knowledge of it.
And I actually did set up on the portal a request for any future applications, but unfortunately it's been changed where the application's been put. If you search Flemingate, it doesn't come up. It's actually very difficult to find. And it's definitely not flagged up on my previous request for notifications. It's not come through at all.
Have you got a pen, Abby?
Yes.
I can give you the, once you get on the planning portal.
I found it now. I have found it now. So I'm trying to circulate it to people.
This planning application, this present one that we're
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. I have
Right.
found it, but like a number of other residents, I've only just realised it's been put on there.
If I
Well,
could, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
but sadly, Abby, at one time a day, half a dozen houses would get a letter close by, and the government have changed the planning legislation, and the East Riding chose to go with that idea, which is that they don't have to write a letter.
Yeah.
What they can still do is display a notice, and you say that's
That's
what's
today.
happened today.
That was today.
Yeah.
Definitely today.
Yeah.
And also, I think a number of the residents have written in and sent it through Matt's email yesterday and the day before.
Yeah, but they should write direct to East
Oh, yes,
Riding.
they're going to, but I think they thought because they just found out about this meeting, they would address this meeting first.
Yeah.
And then, like I say, there's an awful lot of documents on there that are going to take a lot of time to go through. So I think people want to write a well-considered objection rather than just I object. I think a lot of people will be doing it line by line.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chair, any correspondence that came to me have been circulated to members, and also bear in mind that with every application we've seen them before the deadline. So whilst in any application residents still have further time to put comments on, that's on all applications. We're not commenting on this particular situation, or because there's no objections to an application when we view them doesn't mean there won't be objections that appear on the planning portal.
Okay, then.
I can guarantee there will be objections on that portal.
Thank you. Right. So what now then, Matt?
If there's no more questions for Abby, I will, as ceremoniously as possible, remove you from the meeting, and then you can carry on watching the proceedings on the live feed via YouTube.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you ever so much for your time, everybody.
No problem, Abby. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Right. I've got Anne, Ian. Anne?
It's really to Matt. Can we say anything about the fact that the notices only went up today, the day that we get the planning notice? That seems to me a bit fiddly.
There's nothing to stop councillors making any comments, but you need to bear in mind that the comments that will be taken into consideration are the material considerations that I circulated earlier. It sometimes can strengthen an opinion, but the more there are comments that aren't material, often dilute the message and the comments, and can mean that the East Riding don't have to listen to them. And there may be multiple reasons as to why the consultation hasn't happened. And I think, as the chair said, because government changed the legislation, and I think the wider public aren't aware of that, but there is still, I think, justifiably the expectation that people will receive letters. But that isn't the law anymore, unfortunately.
Just before we move off this one then, Anne, what we could do as a committee is to, separate to this, just in general terms, if members agree, to get Matt to write to Alan Menzies, who's a director of planning, saying that we've had this planning application being consulted come before us, and there was a resident representing a number of residents informed us today that the notices had only just gone up today. Yet we was notified last week. I do understand we're an official consultee, so they get the priorities. Sometimes they prioritise, but nevertheless, I think it would be courteous of us just to point this out to Alan in future, if they could get the public notices out on the lamp posts. I think that would, on this particular point, that would be suffice. Coming back to this planning application, I see I've got David's hand up, so I'll take you in a minute, David. I'll take you first, Ian, then. Sorry, is that all right that we agree we get Matt to do that? Yeah.
Yeah,
right,
Mr. Chair, I could ask you the question in general regarding what are the processes regarding that, rather than a specific application. Like I'll use this as an example. Yeah,
sorry, I meant in general terms, Matt. Let's use this as an example. Yeah. Correct. We could do with that information for future reference. Yes, sorry, Ian, go on.
Well, my concern is the noise and environmental issues. They've moved it back 2 meters. They did a very extensive presentation a year ago.
Yes.
They've made very, very minor amendments to the situation.
Yes.
Nothing else. And it's going to impact on the health, well-being of the residents and possibly the property prices.
Yes. Yeah.
So
correct.
In my view, we should object as strongly as is possible and record it that way.
Good. David Horsley. There you
go. Thank you. It seems to me that one issue that we should raise is that the council were well aware that this would be a very controversial application, and they've been preparing it for quite a long time. So it really is not acceptable that they didn't get the information to local residents with as much notice as possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. David Tucker. Thank you, David, for that. Yeah.
It's a difficult one. I mean, clearly it's an essential, environmentally friendlier system, which is going to reduce our carbon output quite significantly. So from that respect, it's something that we should be looking to. In terms of the mention made earlier of visual amenity and the look of it, this isn't something that you can object to on a planning application. Unfortunately, visual elements don't come into it unless the design plan itself has structural faults. If a tree is going to have to be taken down to accommodate this, then we're desperately crying out for more vegetation. And with a greater tree planting around the area and with the right type of tree, the noise issue can be ameliorated quite considerably, because trees not only can absorb pollution, they can also reflect noise quite considerably. So this might be something that we ask the council to look at a little bit more carefully.
Thank you. Linda?
Councillor Tucker is absolutely right. My understanding of this is that the leisure centre is currently heated using one of these boilers, and people don't complain about the noise, and having 2 more of these boilers is not going to make any difference to the level of noise, which at the moment is absolutely zilch. And the only time you actually hear these is when they fire up. And that is the same as a gas boiler in your own house. You just don't hear it. That is my understanding. And the amount of pollution that is produced is very, very low, which is one of the reasons for making this proposal. But I think the great benefit of this is the fact that this is going to be heating the Minster. It's going to be heating County Hall. When the biomass boiler in the college reaches its sell-by date in about 5 years' time, this will also heat the college. It will also heat some houses as well and give them cheaper heating. And I think it will be also heating the treasure house as well. So the actual application of it is absolutely spot on with regard to what we have to do to try to combat climate change. I think the other thing as well that we've got to think about as well is that because it's been moved back 2 meters, it's actually been moved kind of round the corner away from Minster Avenue as well. So, and because the whole building is going to be smaller, the original plans were to actually see these engines in a glass building. Now they're going to be enclosed with more, even more insulation, and the planning officer, Stephen Hunt, has recommended that the brick that's used for this building is comparable to the bricks that the leisure centre is built in already. So, I mean, what we've got here is the kind of technology that lots of other places are already using, and you probably don't even know about it because it's just happened and it's not really an issue. And there is a big one being built in Goole, which is very similar, which is I think really exciting. And from somebody who is extremely concerned about emissions, and as you know, chop off my head, I've got environmental written around it. The fact that we are going to be reducing carbon dioxide and producing heat, which can be used for so many different buildings at such a low cost, I think is really, really exciting. So I do understand if residents think it's going to be noisy, but the application actually states that it is not going to be noisy, and the amount of pollution is minimal. You get more pollution, I understand, from a diesel car idling outside of your house, rather than from these quite state-of-the-art boilers. When these boilers come to the end of their life, then they will be replaced with even more sustainable and environmentally friendly boilers. So this is a stopgap to go forward and to make sure that we do reach our target of being carbon neutral by 2045, I think it is. So that would be my comment. I do think that if we read through these the paperwork that's been provided, and it is quite extensive, the move that the council has made to actually accommodate the residents in Minster Avenue have been quite extensive.
Thank you. Anna, I noticed your hand up.
Yeah. I think it's a shame that this hasn't been made obvious to the residents. The residents obviously don't realise there isn't going to be noise and the level of pollution and so on. It's a shame nobody's told them or given them, okay, they can't have letters, but they could have a letter saying, we've changed the application and these are the facts about the noise, about the pollution, whatever, would allay people's fears.
Yeah, but Anne, they're going with what the government guidelines have stated. And if they choose to do that, then there's nothing we can do. Whilst we may agree with you, and rightly so, they've chosen to do that, and they don't want to set a precedence, because if they do, they'll be back to square one like they were before.
Yeah. It just seems a shame that they're not communicating, really.
Yeah. David Tucker.
Just to sort of wrap up the debate, really, because I think we've had a good airing of it, just to say that having Abby there giving an excellent presentation and explaining her feelings about it and that of the residents, I think is a really, really good thing for this committee and for other committees to get people involved. And I think it's something that we should encourage. And I'd just like to say thank you to Abby, if she's still listening to us, for giving an excellent presentation and putting your case forward. And I hope that the arguments that have come up now have given you a better understanding of the position that Beverley Town Council finds itself in.
And also, if she is still listening, Abby, please remember that you can, if the residents select you, you can speak at the planning committee when this application will be aired at East Riding. Councillor Johnson.
I'd just like to add to that and thank Abby enormously for getting involved, and I would recommend that she writes to Alan Menzies at the county council, and then hopefully there will be a response to all the queries that she and her neighbours have, because it is of concern if people are so worried about it and the facts aren't being properly communicated, as Councillor Tucker says.
Yeah. So do we have a proposal then, Linda? Have we got a proposal there?
Sorry, well, I'm very in favour of this, but I'm only one member of the committee, and I would like to propose that we support the recommendation for this innovative combined heat and power building, with all the potential that it has for reducing CO2 and creating a green heating network within Beverley.
A seconder. David?
I'm happy to second that.
Yeah. Have we got anybody?
Could we mention about the tree? You know, I have.
That is actually a very good point, if I may, Chair.
You know, I've got a thing about trees.
You're absolutely right. When my understanding is that when this was shown to the local ward councillors, the comment from one of them was, why can't we have some more trees? So I think there is a real potential for planting more trees on this site.
Well, could you add that into the proposal, Matt? Yeah, he's saying yes.
Yes.
So I'll go to the vote then. All those in favour of Linda's proposal and David's proposal? 1, 2, 3, 4. Against? Abstain? 1 against. Abstain? 2. Right. So that is carried. Yeah. Right, back to 53 Minster Moorgate then. Erection of a single-storey extension to the rear following demolition of existing replacement dormer with a full glazed dormer and the installation of a roof light to rear. And the comments suggested are Beverley Town Council has no objection to this application, but only on the condition the matters of the Conservation Officer are satisfactorily addressed. Yeah, agreed.
Mr. Chair, yeah, just comment. You'll notice that in the two that myself and the chair delegated, on that one, we've referred to the conservation officer. It's either a new conservation officer or one that we haven't seen before. Their comments are very interesting. So for anybody who is actually interested in that side of planning, looking at the new conservation officer's comments, it's very interesting. In each of those 3 cases so far, we've looked at the comments. They've raised issues and put a holding comment rather than saying approve or not approve an application. So it is worthwhile when you have a minute, if you're interested in the conservation side of planning, to look at some of the notes made on those applications.
Yeah, I think, Matt, they've got an assistant now as well. Assistant Conservation Officer. Right, 34 Chestnut Avenue, Beverley. Erection of a single detached garage and studio office following demolition of existing garage. And again, Beverley Town Council has no objections to this application. Do we agree with that? Yeah. Evans Almshaw, Alshaw, Vauxhall, Swinemore Lane, Beverley. Application to modify the planning obligation to section 106 legal agreement dated the 13th of January 1995 relating to planning permission 313-1329-D in order to allow a reduction in height of the retained edges. Beverley Town Council has no objection to the planning application. Ian?
Well, I have an objection to it. We're seeing the systematic destruction of Swinemore Lane that features in the Victoria County history from 1514. I researched it this afternoon. We've seen bush tyres, or someone has removed the hedging accompanying the tyre place. Evans Halmshaw building has been decimated since they moved out, and there were gaping holes in it, and we need more screening down there, not less. Bearing in mind the application that's for the filling station at the bottom of Swinemore Lane, where we're just seeing the whole thing decimated. And what we need is healthy screening, be it Hawthorne. I mean, there's all sorts of different types of plans on the drawings for submitting a hedge, but they're trying to keep it down at a metre. And but I don't think that's quite sufficient. So, and it's irrespective of the view, which is from my front. But I would suggest that there needs to be more screening, not less, down Swinemore Lane.
Yeah, definitely. Linda?
I'd like to second Ian's suggestion. Hedges are being ripped up all over the place. We've seen what's happening with the building on the Minster Way, with the new houses being built. We need hedging for our bird life, for our insect life, small mammals, etc. So I'm completely in support of Councillor Gow on this one.
Okay. Matt?
If councillors wish to object to this one, there is the standing order of loss of, material consideration of loss of ecological habitats.
Okay.
Well, it's tenuous, but yes, I agree. I mean, hedges at the moment, unfortunately, they serve the purpose of collecting litter, but thankfully to the wombles, that's been eradicated. Environmentally rather than aesthetically, yes.
Yeah.
David?
I completely agree with all comments there, and I think there's a twofold approach to this. I walked down that hedgerow a while ago, and it's quite an ancient hedge. There's an old ratio that was used by a guy called Max Hooper, and it works pretty well, that for every one species there is, it's about 100 years old. And there's some pretty significant stuff down there. But in a sense, it's trying to preserve that, but at the same time, it's going forward and saying that we do need more planting, we do need more vegetation, we do need more trees. And it harps back a little bit to what I'd said previously in terms of absorbing pollution and putting the carbon down below ground where it needs to be, absorbing noise, which we talked about previously, but as Linda said, it's providing a variety of habitats for species which they're losing everywhere else. So in a sense, I think we've got two things here. We've got the old and the future.
Yeah. Back to you, Ian.
Well, just bearing in mind that since the malfunction junction was put in at the far end, we have a copious build-up of fumes, as you'll be aware, Peter, from where you park your car. There is continuous traffic down there, apart from when it doesn't work, which is much better. The carbon emissions standing down there are disgraceful. And we really need more organic means of protecting the environment.
Yeah.
I must admit, Ian and members, that the amount of development that has taken place down Swinemore Lane over recent years, hawthorn hedges have been taken out and not been replaced by anything. All right, a chain link fence is about as much as you get, but I thought hawthorn hedges were protected, and so they should remain protected. They shouldn't be taken out for any reason at all. They were put there for a reason, to stop people going into fields, because you get scratched, like I don't know what, but also for the birds to nest and breed. We take all edges up, we'll end up with a major disaster on our hands. So I'm all for keeping it hedgerows. And if you look down Swinemore Lane, as Ian rightly has pointed out, it's rather piecemeal. You can see where an edge is being taken out to make way for a development. Then there's a big gap. Then there's another bit of edge, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I agree. Agree with what Ian says. And David.
Just thinking about what Ian's just said, I just had an idea. I talking about the pollution at Malfunction Junction, which is a new phrase to me. It's wonderful. I really like that, Ian. Could we consider, as a council, doing a pollution survey, getting an atmospheric pollution survey, a noise survey along this area, in order to see exactly what the condition is? We know for a fact that in London, we faced children who have died, and there have been court cases because of pollution. We're also facing a situation where we've got the possibility of a garage, offices, trade-in places, and all the rest of it coming down there. If we had some evidence as to exactly what was happening down there at the moment, we might be able to put up a better objection.
So this is two parts here. We're dealing with this planning application, but then we can also make a proposal that Matt, with his other leg, contacts the East Riding about the possibility of getting an air pollution monitoring station sited on Swinemore Lane. Yes, I've got you, Ian. This would be in two parts, but if we can deal with this first part about the Evans Alshaw and then get that out of the way. So are we in agreement then with Ian's objections? And it was seconded by David Tucker. Yeah, in agreement with that. Yeah.
Strongest possible terms. With regard to the air monitoring, there's a resident who's actually doing some building at the moment down there, Brian Irvin, who has terrible chest issues, and they've been increased considerably since the roundabout was lost. I'm sure Brian would consent to having something to monitor the air pollution within his property grounds.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, Matt, you got that. Are we all in agreement with?
Well, with all due respect, Mr. Chair, that isn't an agenda item. It's purely this planning application. I think we need to look into it a bit more detail. You can't make a proposal on something that isn't agendaed, that's quite a significant issue. Yeah. I could ask the East Riding what they already have, because the East Riding may already have surveys in place.
Yeah, I didn't want to. Yeah, you're right, Matt. Slap my wrist for that. Yeah, you are right. It's not on the agenda as an item, but I suppose there's nothing to stop you from looking into it. What council?
I can liaise with East Riding, see if there's anything they already have in place, and then we can put it on the next agenda.
And then report to the next agenda.
Yeah.
At the next in March. Okay, is that acceptable? Yeah. Okay.
Can I just make a quick comment there, Chair, please, about air pollution monitoring? There was an air pollution monitoring station on Hengate until recently, and it was Paul Bellotti who was kind of responsible for that. So it might be useful to write to Paul. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are we voting against the...
He's planning and transport director. No, not planning, but transport housing director, environment, what have you. Yeah, right. Okay, the next one then.
Oi, 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 oi. I've had my hand up for ages. Could we make the reference to pollution surveying in general and not only to Swinewell Lane?
Yeah. Yeah, well, Matt will find out what the score is and report back at the next March meeting.
So
okay.
have we voted against that against the proposal that's on the agenda?
We voted for it.
Oh, okay, must have missed that when we doorbell went.
Unanimous. So the next item is 9 North Bar without Beverley, construction of replacement roof, installation of conservation roof light and roof lantern, external alterations to existing single-story extension to the rear, and the comments from suggested. Beverley Town Council has no objection. Okay, new agreement. Yeah. And again, 9 North Bar without removal of dividing wall between kitchen and summer room, installation of T-shaped steels pointing to walls outside, tidy capping stones, replace downpipe, replace existing roof to rear. The list goes on. Yeah, it's we have no objection, have we? No. It sounds very much a complete refurbishment.
Yeah, positive and keeping the fabric of the building.
Yeah. No objections then. No. Alban House, 110 Laregate, Beverley. It's in the Minster area conservation area. Fell one number horse chestnut tree due to roots causing significant damage to the front boundary wall and railings, which cannot be repaired until the tree is removed, and concerns that the continuous vigorous growth would risk damage to the grade 2 listed house. And the comments are that Beverley Town Council has no objection to this application on the condition all works take place at the time which will have negative impact on wildlife. That agreed. 53 Minster Moorgate, erection of a single-story extension to the rear following demolition of existing extension and sash window, replacement of a dormer window with fully glazed dormer window, installation of roof light to rear, insulated walls and floors to the ground floor level, replacement of defective timber windows and internal alterations consisting of an handrail and balustrade to staircase. And again, we don't have any objection, but we refer to the observation and condition on, but only on the condition the matters the conservation officer are satisfactorily addressed. Ian.
Well, just with regard to the conservation officer comments, and my life is very sad and I've had plenty of time to go through this agenda this afternoon. It's pleasing to see the comments made by the conservation. I think that's a real positive And if somebody else has a sad life and can be bothered to read what is laid before us, it is worth seeing. But I endorse everything that Matt's put in with regard to the delegated response.
I think it's because we've got, as I said, the conservation officer now as an assistant shouldn't make any difference, but it appears to have made a big difference. David Horsley.
This is the same house as was referred to above in one of the first two applications, but this one raises slightly more conservation concerns. So we're slightly reinforcing what was said previously.
Yeah. Okay. Agreed that. Yeah. Right. Holly Lodge, St Giles Croft, Westwood Area Conservation, fell 1 number willow tree due to low amenity value, multi-stemmed at base, and he's continually interfering with telecom lines. And then crown reduce 1 number horse chestnut by pruning of the tertiary branches that are fouling the telecom lines. Okay. Are we on agreement with that? Claire, are you in agreement? Westwood House, Westwood Road. Again, it's a conservation area for Westwood. Crown reduce 1 number rowan tree by 2.5 meters to improve light in the garden. Are you in agreement? Yeah. Yeah, all in agreement. 2 Graben Lane, Beverley. Again, conservation and market. It's Westwood Area Conservation Area and Markets Area Conservation. Crown lift 1 number yew tree by 2 meters, and crown lift 1 number silver birch by 1 meter. Yeah. St Mary's Primary School, Eden Road, relocation of a metal framed cycle shelter. We don't have any objection to that, no. 23 Woodlands, Westwood Conservation Area, removal of 1 number sycamore tree in order to block pave the existing parking space, as excavation of this parking space will sever structural holding roots and will cause the tree to become a serious failure hazard. And we don't object to that. Ian.
Well, that's a bit of a threat, isn't it? We're gonna dig it out and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
It's a fait accompli, but I mean the Woodlands needs to maintain its dense appearance, and I'm sure. And what is the replacement planting within that?
What I was going to ask.
Yeah, same here.
Matt.
You can add to it on the condition that appropriate specimens are used to replace what is removed.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, is that agreed?
Yes.
Right. Item 7 then. Allotments issues. Kelgate flooding 7A. You'll recall the last meeting. Both Matt and myself reported on flooding, of which Linda and myself had been up to CD the allotments for ourselves, and whilst we were there, we were talking to a tenant of one of our allotments on that Kelgate site, and he introduced us to a resident of Kelgate, and you saw the pictures which was presented to you. Matt, you would like to say something on this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to update the committee, thanks to Councillor Johnson liaising with East Riding officers, they sent a plan that shows where the engineers plan showing where the waterways are, the waterworks. The only water pipe crossing the allotments land is Yorkshire Water managed underdrain. I reported it to Yorkshire Water. They've got it as a job, and they are going to look into it, and they're going to liaise with me when they're going to come down and see the site, so I can meet them there. But naturally, at the moment, due to COVID and other more pressing funding issues, they're currently running quite behind schedule. But they do have it as a work to look at and liaise with me on that. So I'll report back when that's happened.
Is that okay? Great, that's acceptable. And 7B, community plot compost toilet. Matt, again.
Yeah, when myself, I think it was myself, you, Mr. Chair, and Councillor Johnson visited a site visit with the community group before Christmas, obviously all nicely socially distanced. It was agreed for discussing with them that nothing would be put on sites until after the pandemic and the restrictions had been lifted. However, I've had a communication from the group wanting permission to purchase the item before the end of the financial year and put it on site but keep it shut. I have liaised a couple of times with them. They initially said about they are going to get insurance for it when it's open. I have said that if the council did agree to it to go on site before the end of the financial year, they would have to get it insured, because whilst it may not be of use, if any damage occurred to it or anything, they would have the item wouldn't be insured. So my advice to council is, if they approve it, it should be insured and clearly marked, potentially with yellow tape around it, making it clear that it is closed. I know it will have a key lock on it, so people won't be able to get in. But I think it would need everything to prove that it is not used. I know there are still some concerns regarding the ongoing maintenance of it and the cleaning schedule, which we still need to discuss in more depth with the group. But this is partly to reconnect it with their funding, and they want to spend the money by the end of the financial year.
Any more comments, Anne?
Could we get them? They could maybe order it or something. I'm bothered. If it's on site, somebody will break in and use it. I mean, we just know that, don't we? Could they just order it or something, but not put it on site if they need to spend the money before the end of the financial year? Could we suggest that to them?
I don't think they have anywhere to place it.
All right. It just bothers me that people would break in and try and use it, and then, yeah. Am I wrong?
Linda?
I've got a really silly suggestion. You might want to shoot me. But if they ordered it, could they actually put it in the town council park in our yard? At least it would be safer there for the time being.
That's a
in
thought.
The compound?
In the compound.
Well, that's not a silly idea, Linda. That's an excellent idea.
Quite sensible, yes.
Yeah.
I do have them every now and again. That was it, obviously.
Right.
Is that the one for the week?
We'll move with that one then, Matt. Is that agreeable? Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds good. Well done.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. My
allotments.
Sorry.
You what, Matt?
So I think with the weather tonight, I think the internet's been affected. So I missed some of that. So the proposal is to allow them to purchase it, but we'll arrange to have it in the in the the word left my head.
Compound.
The compound.
Yeah.
And but there's still to get insurance on it, because again the compound isn't covered. So insurance and place it on the compound for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be safer there, I'm sure.
Just while we're talking about community plots, 3B, on 3B, and you can add 3BA to this in brackets. That is the two community plots on Spark Mill map. I know that Ellen had ideas about that, and since having a discussion with yourself, that the potential users are probably not going to take up those two plots. However, I would not like to see them go to an ordinary tenant because of the very fact that they've got two nice polytunnels on, one of which was well, they were both purchased through two separate grants. There is a potential of a group that I know of, and so does Linda, but it's only a potential that they would probably be interested in taking one of these plots on. It's some way off, Matt, but I just thought I'd let committee know that we could probably look into that at some stage.
And just to confirm to the committee, those plots are not part of the overall plots for distribution to tenants, so they are ring fenced as community.
Yeah, and one of this group would be fit that criteria, Matt. That's okay.
Yep.
So then 8, Beverley Beck Port Boards. Linda Johnson, Councillor Johnson, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Those of us who are members of the Hanseatic Group Working Party will be very aware of the fact that the port boards, for want of a better description of them, down on the back are in a very, very sad state. And certainly the chair of the Beverley Hansa would be very keen to see those port boards refurbished and to indeed mention the fact that Beverley was, as the 10th biggest town in England in those days, was a very important port and member of the medieval Hansa League. And of course now we are members of the modern Hansa League, which is really quite exciting, because that's a recognition from the other 193 members of the modern Hansa League that Beverley was really quite important. So the first challenge has been to find out who actually owns the port boards, and I have discovered with the Deputy Town Clerk's help that they are managed by museums and archives. So East Riding of Yorkshire Council Museum and Archives, and it is indeed that department that's just been involved in refurbishing the 10 area boards in Beverley, and you will see the most recent one that's been put up is in Flemingate, describing Flemingate's important role in the history of Beverley in the past. You will be aware, of course, that we do have another project that's ongoing down at the Beck, which is the Beck Nature Project, which was very much the town clerk's baby, and we have been awarded £17,000 for that, but that does also involve the production of interpretary boards, but with regard to the nature that we find down in the Beck area. And that project also involves other agencies such as the Civic Society, who've just put up the boards, the area boards in Beverley, and also Yorkshire Wildlife Trust. And now, unfortunately, as we know, Helen is not well at the moment and is unable to to get that project underway. And indeed, we have been promised, I'm sure I'm right in saying, Matt, that the money is in the bank for when we need to access it, and we don't need to access it at the moment.
Yeah, it's ring fenced in community stuff. We don't have it yet, but it's ring fenced for the project.
Fantastic. So, as we're going to be producing some boards, some nature boards, sorry about that, down on the back, then it would also be perhaps sensible at the same time to produce some new port boards down at the back. Now, East Riding Museums and Archives are very keen to ensure that all the boards around Beverley are all similar. But they're also keen to make sure that all the boards around Beverley are modern boards, and they use modern ways of interpreting history, which perhaps those boards at the moment do not do. So although Hamish was quite keen at the time for refurbishment of those boards, having spoken to Yorkshire East Riding Museums and Archives, they would much rather us start afresh, start from the beginning, and work with East Riding Museums and Archives and indeed other historians in the town and produce a new set. So this might actually require some funding from Beverley Town Council, but I'm sure we could also go elsewhere to get funding from other agencies as well, such as perhaps commuted sums or other awarding bodies in Beverley. But we just really wanted your feedback as to what your thoughts were with regard to that, the Beck being such an important part of Beverley, and hopefully becoming even more important, because hopefully 193 different towns in Europe will be coming to visit us because we are members of the Modern Hansa League and we want to show off our Beck. Thank you, Chair.
Linda. David Owsley and then Anne.
Right. When we're considering putting in boards for the Hansa League and Beverley Sport, we should be considering not just the town end of the Beck, but also the far end and or Grove Hill, because the port extended over the whole of that area at different points. And it was indeed the main port of the north of England for quite some period.
Yeah.
If I just may comment, there is actually a very, very, very old board on the Lockkeeper's Cottage. And again, that would need to be completely refurbished and reinterpreted, again, because we've learned so much more over the years. So yeah, I think it's quite an exciting idea, this.
I agree with Linda wholeheartedly, and also, well, do we know, this summer was going to be a big festival with the Hanseatic League and with the Minster and so on, because of the anniversary of St John of Beverley. So if we could get it done sooner rather than later, that would be good. But yes, I think to totally redo sounds good, and we can put some money into it.
Yeah. So have you got a proposal then, Linda, to move this forward?
Well, the proposal is entirely exploratory to ask Beverley Town Council for support in moving this forward, in exploring this idea with East Riding Museums and Archives and other historians, with regard to in future putting some new boards up around the Beck, which may or may not require investment from the Town Council. I think Claire wants to say something.
Claire, did you want to say something?
When you mention about the different agencies who could potentially give money for the boards, would they be prepared to donate any money for the benches as well?
No, we're sorting the benches out. The benches are separate, Claire.
Okay.
Down. We've already got something. We're working with East Riding on the benches down on Beverley Beck. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
The benches project was actually specifically mentioned in the budget that we passed. So we've already earmarked money for benches. But Claire, you sent that picture of that lovely bench in Hull, and yeah, certainly any.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the supply details for that.
Right,
So,
thank you.
Sorry, Chair, just like to say, if I may, that obviously the Beck is a building site at the moment because we've got a massive refurbishment of the waterworks. So it may take longer rather than sooner to do this. So I appreciate what you said, Councillor Willis, but we've also got a situation where even the government are now admitting that it may be the end of summer before 89% of people have been vaccinated twice, and we do reach herd immunity. So we may not be celebrating.
Oh, I realise that, Linda. I am a realist. Sometimes.
Sad. I mean, if anybody needs celebrating, it's John of God. But
right.
Yeah.
Can you both mute then, Linda and Anne, and over to you, Ian.
The expansion of the waterworks is virtually complete, and they're actually taking the road that they installed on Figham out at the moment. So hopefully that'll soon be passed. Great.
So moving forward then with this then, Linda, your proposal would be that we seek move it forward. We go to full council for acceptance and possible future funding as well, and also get other external funders involved if possible. Yeah, is that okay? Great. All agreed, Claire?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. It doesn't need to go to full. It doesn't need to go to full council. You've approved now the exploration of it. It would then, after some time doing the exploration with more solid details, then bring that back to full council.
Yeah.
To assess it in terms of funding. So I have Councillor Johnson proposing that, and I've got the gist of it all. Is there a second, please, Mr. Chair? Is that you, Mr. Chair? Yeah.
I'm seconded it.
Oh, yeah.
Can we have myself and Vice Chair, but Vice Chair David Boynton I won't say he, because of his work commitments, his work is a priority. Can I suggest Linda work with you, Matt? We're doing a lot behind the scenes to help Matt and Libby out, because PPS is heavy going at the moment, and so to help Matt out and Libby, Linda and myself are doing a bit of chasing around, gathering all the information up, and then just handing it over to Matt for him to just tie the loose ends up. Is that agreed? That we continue to do that over this? Yeah. Okay. So item 9 then, emergency community plan. It's to consider the working group of a small working group of councillors who have the appropriate skills, knowledge and experiences to develop a new emergency community plan. We've got to get cracking with this because we've just had really high tides. Yeah, I've got you in. Really high tides, and you know, it's scary, and also we've had some bad weather, frostiness, and a little bit of snow. And I've already said at the top of the meeting what we've done for Cherry Tree, classic example. So what Matt's suggesting is that members of the we have members of this group do not have to be on the Planning, Property and Services Committee, as this is a plan for the whole of the council. So I've spoken to Matt, and what he's suggesting is that we just have a small group of council members to look at this, to help Matt, because it's a big document and it needs doing correctly. Help him out, well, not Matt person, but the office, help him out. And you know, I've already done some work on it, because we desperately need 2 water pumps. And I'm just thinking that possibly myself and some other members would probably like to, from the, you know, other councillors from within the Beverley Town Council would probably like to have a look at doing this. Ian and then Claire.
Would it be a matter for full council then to put it open to all members of the council and see who sticks their heads above?
Well, yeah, I think that is the way forward. But can you just come in, Matt? You before you, Claire.
Yeah. Because this is a lot of the community plan is about using councillors' knowledge as well of the wider community. You're the people that are elected to represent the community, where you've all got fingers in lots of pies in the community, and you know a lot of groups and individuals and organisations. And you also come to the council with a lot of past professional and voluntary experiences and skills and knowledge. And because this is the emergency plan is the council's and the councillors' emergency plan primarily, and we have councillors, for example, Councillor Johnson isn't a full member of PPS, but has a lot of knowledge of particularly the church organisations, for example, in town, the community organisations. They're part of the emergency plan because they are organisations with facilities that may be needed in an emergency and are detailed within an emergency plan. So it's the idea of councillors working on this together with officer support, rather than usually the other way around with things. It's usually officers working with council support, because this is really driven from the community that the councillors come from and represent, and it's using the best of all our councillors, their experience and knowledge to put something together. So again, it can be agreed at this meeting that a group will be put together with suggested councillors. We can organise a working group meeting. It will be a public meeting because it's a working party to look at a document. So it wouldn't have to be agendaed as such. And then once something is more in place, to then go to full council.
Yeah.
And I can liaise with other parishes to get copies of theirs.
Yeah. Claire.
When you're talking about the 2 pumps, is it a question of we already have the pumps somewhere, East Riding has them, or is it a question of the town council acquiring their own pumps? And obviously on Swinemore we are nearer to the river. I don't know if that means, and obviously last time Fotherby flooded, there was a lady down there. So I mean, I know when my husband on his ward, he has flooding a lot on his ward, and he has to go out and call the pumps out to pump the water. So is it a question of that we have to mastermind actually acquiring them and operating them? I was just wondering.
Yeah, that's it basically, Claire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
If we'd have had a pump that night, when
He
I was
wouldn't have flooded.
No, if we'd have had a pump that night when I was round at Fotherby 2 years ago in November, the fireman said to me, "You haven't got a pump, have you, Pete?" I said, "No." That's a problem, because he said we're needed elsewhere. All we're doing is pumping water here. If town council had had a pump similar size to this, you could have stepped in, and we could have gone doing better things. So it's that sort of situation that
I mean, there's a couple of elements to. I mean, obviously, there's the getting the quote. I mean, presumably somebody's got to get the quotes for these pumps from a company, and then you've got to acquire them, and then obviously we get some flooding on Swinemore, me or you rings a number to get the pump to come out to pump the water. But then there's the other element, which is you can't keep doing that. I mean, on Sean's ward, they're talking about building a bundle or shoring a Polefleet drain. I mean, there's all those aspects to it.
No, these aren't massive pumps. These are little mobile pumps, Claire.
Yeah.
You know, that we need to have to make this community emergency plan work properly.
Okay.
Anything over and above, if there's any mass flooding, right? These pumps, yeah, I've got you, Matt. I've got you, Linda. These little pumps would not cope. It would be over to the East Riding Council. They've got 2 huge pumps, and Environment Agency. They would come in. God forbid they're not going to be required.
Yeah.
They were only required a year, 18 months ago, down at Beverley Beck, when the pumping station packed up, and they had 2 pumps going.
Well, I would definitely be interested in that from the perspective that I would be interested in it from the perspective that I feel that we are vulnerable on Swinemore.
Okay then, right. So we'll move forward with this then. So what do you suggest, Matt?
Well, it's a wider strategic document than just about pumps and planning. The detail things like the contact details for everyone who is the contact in town for one of the church halls, for example. Yeah. So if there was just an issue of some people losing electric and they need somewhere to go for the night, that's all the town council would do is link up the people with the issue with the people who have the facility that they can go to. It's a wider strategic document of that kind. My suggestion, Mr. Chair, is that 2 of the councillors who I thought would be useful who aren't on planning, Councillor Johnson, who is here on planning and has been to quite a lot of planning meetings, and Councillor Jack with his very practical knowledge, both in terms of skills and knowledge of the town, with potentially 2 or 3 other members of this group. If we get too many actually focusing on it, it can become cumbersome, but it might be that they identify right. We just need to find out these details about local schools. And we ask another councillor just to do that and pull that bit together. It's about disseminating the work amongst councillors, but then 3 or 4 councillors with an officer coordinating that. So my suggestion, Mr. Chair, would be yourself, Mr. Chair, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Jack, and Councillor Tucker and Councillor Wildey as 5 to then work with myself to disseminate the information.
Is that agreed then? Yeah. Very good. Okay then, right. Right, all agreed on that. Right. Item 10 then, to consider the exclusion of the public and press from the meeting on the grounds that confidential information in relation to business contracts shall be disclosed. Public Bodies and Admission of Meetings Act 1960. And the motion is that the public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that confidential information in relation to business contracts shall be disclosed. Public Bodies Admission of Meetings Act 1960. That's all agreed? Right.
Does that mean turn YouTube off then?
Yeah, I'll need a proposal in a second, Mr. Chair.
I'll propose we turn it off.
And I've Councillor Wildey is seconding. If you just bear with me.